just pause that for the moment.
Everybody, I'm Graham Brown, the CEO at ARPAS-UK. ARPAS is the UK trade association that effectively looks after all things drone. What I'm going to try and cover fairly quickly is, what are drones, understanding the economics, looking at avoiding some common mistakes, and really give you some feedback on some of the financial the financial and business cases that we've been establishing over the last 12 months. You'll see an additional logo at the bottom of the page there next to ARPAS, the Connected Places Catapult. We've been working with them. They're one of the government accelerators, and we've been doing some drone projects with them. So very briefly on ARPAS, if you don't know who we are, we're a not-for-profit. We represent the drone ecosystem, everything from manufacturers all the way through to service providers, consultants. We've got a lot of smaller companies, but we also have some bigger companies like PwC, Boeing, Thales in our membership. And really what we're trying to do is enable business and be an informed source of information and news and what is going on in the what is actually going to be a fairly rapidly changing regulatory and legislative environment compared with other things. I mean, at times it feels like it's moving very slowly, but it's actually changing quite a lot. And there is an airspace modernization consultation available now. It closes on Monday, but if you haven't had a look at that, then I suggest you have a look. We work with regulators. It's not only the CAA, it's health and safety, it's Ofcom, it's the security guys. And then we work with a lot of government departments, DFT being probably the lead one, but a lot with BEIS, the Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy department, the Home Office, but in particular the police. And then other industry trade associations. So I saw that some of you have come in from via RICS or the Survey Association and others, and we're more and more collaborating with other trade associations and institutes, CICs, to collaborate where we provide some of the drone content into what they're trying to do. And the last one I'd mentioned there is on training. ECITB is who we've been working with for the past period to look at training standards and offer industry's view on the training requirements, which is an overlay of the CAA, GBC and A2CFC training. So I think I've covered most of that actually. The last point, though, is you're in a CPD series. We will be running this through, through the rest of the year. We had a short burst to see what the interest is, and I think it's told us enough that we need to continue the program. And the only bits I didn't touch on at the top of the screen here is we are a member. There's a thing called the Airspace Strategy Board, which is the highest level of governance in the UK for airspace. We sit on that. As of the middle of last year, so the government recognised that they wanted drones included, and that's chaired by the aviation minister, and then the guiding light for the future and a plan out to 2040 is the airspace modernisation strategy, and we're well engaged with that team. So. Bold statement, but in the future, drone operations in UK cities will be widespread. Drones could be taken to the sky, medical transport, emergency response, transportation of people and goods, and infrastructure development and maintenance. So whichever sort of aspect you think is important, I think the thing that is true is that, there's going to be a lot of it. And I put this slide in. We've got some drone operators on the call, and we've got people from all over the place. The industry creates its own sort of own language, and V loss, EV loss, BV loss. for me, you know, if you're looking at using drones, that's sort of irrelevant. You need to look at the job that you're trying to do, and that's what we'll stress a bit later. And this slide, this is now 3 years old, but this was really just to demonstrate that, you know, drones are at the start of their life and their contribution to our environment and our sort of our daily lives. But already there are a lot of people looking at the industry, and the reason being is that every report, and whether you believe, you know, 74 million by 2035 or 42 billion by 2030, and the number of jobs, 628,000 jobs, whether you believe those numbers, the fact is they may not be accurate. In fact, they're likely to be inaccurate, but the you know, the line is definitely pointing upwards. So the chart is right, we just don't know exactly which number will occur in which year. And then just briefly, this is a slide from some work that the Future Flight Challenge did, where they sort of tried to divide what could be considered drones into 3 areas. Now, we are, and in fact, the language being used is really sort of, it's new entrants. Drones are what we're going to focus on today, but the other 2 categories you may hear talked about is advanced air mobility, AAM, and people sort of change what those letters may stand for. But the reality is that's sort of the air taxis and short journey. And that is sort of in progress. There's lots of people working on it, lots of companies, but it's going to take some time before all of those aircraft are certified to carry people and they're in regular use. And then on the right is really more about the longer range stuff, which will have some new vehicles in it, but is also a big move to electrification, or rather green fuels for existing aircraft, so that we the level of emissions and what have you is reduced in that regional air piece. What we're going to talk about though is drones. What are they? You need, particularly you may need actually an authorization, sometimes referred to as a permission, and there are restrictions. Now, in truth, if you've got a very small drone, you may not need permissions, but you would still need insurance. And just to further confuse things, everybody has been talking about unmanned aircraft or UAS or UAV, and the CA have switched to remotely piloted aircraft to get rid of the unmanned terminology, and they did that partway through last year. So very quickly, different types of drones. The multi-rotor, which is the one on the right. There's a fixed wing drone, which is the black and yellow one down here. A hybrid drone, which is sort of a mix of the 2, which is something that has rotors for takeoff, so it doesn't need a long landing area, but then switches to fixed wing, so it's more efficient in the air. That's sort of the hybrid. And then tethered is where you want something in a place for a while and the power is drawn from the ground. Quickly flick through some other photos. And the point about this one is, that's sort of got quite a broad, wingspan there. So these aren't all, totally small devices, but there is a lot of work now. And as in line with everything else, drones have got smaller, and the capabilities, a bit like your mobile phone, over a 10-year period, the size and the capabilities dramatically increased. And that same work is going on in the drones, and in particular in the sensors. So just to put things in context, why use drones? What's the fuss about? Well, for sure, right? falls from height are still one of the big issues in industry. They cause a fairly large percentage of deaths, but also the serious injury aspects are fairly horrendous and obviously therefore ongoing. So the all-party parliamentary group on working at height put out the only way to avoid falls from height is to not go up there. So where you can, if you use a drone, then you will avoid that. And they also are, the safer piece is one thing, and that's falls from height, but also hazardous environments. I watched earlier this morning, drone use for inspecting and doing work in sewers. Some areas aren't particularly sort of people friendly, and therefore putting a drone in to do the inspection is one thing. But in regular use, they're faster, they're cheaper, and they're greener compared with using mechanized lifting or scaffolding or helicopters. And lastly, they are consistent, they're accurate, and they're repeatable data collection so that you can compare time periods a little bit more empirically. So, short video.
Connected Places Catapult are the UK's innovation accelerator for cities, transport and places. We've been working with partners across industry to organise drone demonstrations through the Department for Transport funded Drone Pathfinder Catalyst programme. There are so many ways that drones can be used within today's technology and regulatory framework, making things safer, cheaper, faster and providing better quality data. We wanted to showcase this potential across multiple sectors and ultimately drive more UK organisations to use and benefit from drones. So, let's take a look at the Pathfinder demonstrations over the last year. We worked with Yorkshire Housing and Vantage UAV to demonstrate how drones could be used to reduce the overall costs of both planned and unplanned maintenance.
So a typical building like this one, to get up to the different levels of roof that we have on the building, we would need scaffolding, we'd need maybe a cherry picker, we'd obviously have our staff, our surveyors working at height as well, which obviously introduce cost and danger. And of course this building is occupied, we have residents in there, so it's quite intrusive.
We're looking at whether or not we have leaks in the roof, there are cracked tiles or more causant factors.
We can get much closer, a lot of detail of the property, and from a Yorkshire Housing point of view that means we can plan more effectively for how we repair and maintain our buildings in the future.
We engaged with the Agri Epicentre, Outfield Technologies and other partners to show how drones can lead to increased yield and reduced fertilisers and pesticide use.
Barnsley Farmers are an early adopter of drone technology and AI, and it's given them a real competitive advantage in terms of gathering a lot more information about their orchards and a real depth of understanding that previously was expensive to acquire and often impossible. And it's also enabling them to take decisions quicker and smarter about how they approach their commercial markets.
We can map the blossoms on the trees across the orchard, we can map the fruit on the trees across the orchard, we can also map tree size. We can then pull that information together to produce a high accuracy yield estimate for the orchard well ahead of harvest time.
Network Rail demonstrated how drones minimise the risks of trackside working and reduce network outages.
So within our operations in Network Rail, we've got manned and unmanned aviation. And at the moment we've got a fleet of drones and remote pilots that are carrying out various inspections around the infrastructure pretty much on a daily basis. The biggest challenge we face really is that we have 20,000 miles of track that we've got to inspect and maintain. And we don't have access panels all along that 20,000 miles, so it's almost impossible to inspect and maintain that kind of infrastructure.
This is where drones can assist. They're equipped with high-resolution thermal and visual imaging cameras. They can rapidly assess the structural integrity of the railway tracks and power lines. They can evaluate suspected faults and even monitor environmental factors such as flooding.
The future of drones within any kind of infrastructure like ours is well, I'd almost say that there are no limits for what we potentially can do. I truly believe in fully autonomous flights that can monitor and survey our network and therefore keep it safer. And by using drones smartly and using the right drone for the right job, we know that we can do better than we do today.
We've partnered with Survey AR and the Environment Agency to understand how drones can monitor erosion on the UK's ever-changing coastlines.
Traditional ground-based surveying methods require a person to be at the point of surveying. So that could be a risky point at the top of an unstable cliff or at the bottom of an unstable cliff. Using rotary wing drones we can access all kinds of areas relatively easily, cover about 1 kilometre of coastline, and with high resolution colour cameras, multispectral cameras to look at vegetation and thermal cameras, we can really offer great insights into the environment.
The Anglian Coastal Monitoring Programme collects topographic and bathymetric data and aerial photography for our partner organisations to support them with their coastal management decision making. The high-level aims of coastal monitoring are to establish a long-term data set from which to derive statistics such as the maximum and average rates of change. This helps managers determine the condition of their beaches in the context of the historical data set.
So drones actually have really changed the face of what we can do in a lot of science areas. And for coastal monitoring, that allows us to use a variety of different cameras and sensors that are relatively low cost compared to other methods. For coastal surveying, the next steps, I think, are to increase the range of drones that they can fly in a single flight. That is essentially moving towards beyond visual line of sight. The second aspect is something we're working on, which is delivering the data to the client in a very usable format, where the user can visualize the data very easily as if they were there.
We collaborated with drone automation solution providers Herotech 8 and iDrone Images to demonstrate how drone-in-a-box solutions can unlock new applications and increase efficiency.
So Herotech 8 is a robotics startup coming out of Cranfield University. We are a developer and manufacturer of automated drone stations, also known as drone-on-a-box. And our box contains our guidance systems, our power systems, our navigation systems, and most importantly, our communication systems. So the key capability behind our technology, it's really there to enable businesses to deploy drone services without needing personnel on site.
So iDrone Images design, build and manufacture docking stations for drone service providers around the world. Our docking stations offer a fully autonomous solution, from mission planning to the charging of the UAV, and this can all be controlled via a simple user interface. We've been working with the CEA and Catapult for the last 6 months to try and build a body of evidence that enables automation for the future, and a part of this trial is to gather that significant body of evidence that the CEA needs, that the automation that we provide from our docking stations is safe in the UK airspace. Where we see the future of these docking stations is they will be used as a service, so people may be able to request a mission from a docking station. It goes and performs that mission, provides the data and returns back to its docking station.
Buxton Mountain Rescue and Evolved Dynamics showcased how drones designed for bad weather can save lives in search and rescue operations.
Drones provide an affordable aerial view of an incident scene or search area. The priority at the moment is being able to get the drone in the air in the first place, and that means a drone that can operate in some adverse weather conditions. Once we can do that, the possibilities are endless in terms of different sensors we can put on the drone, and the potential for them to be a life-saving tool only increases with time and technology. Currently, we have to keep our drone within visual line of sight of the pilot at all times. If we can find a safe way to operate beyond visual line of sight, that would be hugely useful to our operation.
Sky Mantis has been designed specifically for the UK search and rescue and blue light markets. So 1 hour flight time and can fly in heavy rain like we've got today, but also fly in up to 75 km/h winds. We also have the ability to have a dynamic mission planning application which enables search and rescue staff to quickly identify their search scene, plan the mission, and essentially save lives.
At the moment, if you were to search the ground behind me, for instance, it would take 15 to 20 people to search that and would take a good few hours to do it. As we've proved today, we could put a drone into the air and search that same ground in half the time.
There's been countless examples internationally and nationally where drones have been the difference between a missing person being found or not found.
In addition to driving drone adoption through demonstrations, we managed a drone transport research and innovation grant programme to address the technology gaps required for beyond visual line of sight operations. We also delivered the UK's most extensive research into the public perception of drones to ensure the acceptance of future technologies and services. Overall, through the Pathfinder programme, we demonstrated the benefits that drones can deliver and driven awareness and adoption across a broad range of industries. To understand how drones can benefit your organisation, get in touch with the Connected Places Catapult, ARPAS, or one of the partner organisations we've worked with.
Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, I hope you can see why I wanted to show that video. I mean, that's a snapshot of what's been going on. There are other cases, there are other documents, there's a drone readiness document that's coming out, and there are some other sort of case studies in businesses that try to highlight the solution and then the economic benefits. So the summary really is that, you know, they're a tool. Drones are a tool. So they supplement and enhance conventional technologies, but, you know, they have a real purpose. And, you know, part of that is to obtain data that's in difficult to reach or dangerous places, increasing the speed, the repeatability, the time savings, and the financial business case. And I'm going to cover a few of those a bit later on. Data collection, inspection, detection of all sorts of things. That's anything from, you know, trying to find lost people in the search and rescue aspect, or detecting intrusion if you're looking after a particular site, or you're trying to track movement. You know, as an example, I know that drones are being used in Scotland at the moment. They're reintroducing beavers to certain areas, and they're trying to use drones to track the beavers and see where they're actually going. Photography, photogrammetry, videography. I'm not, you know, the point is, if you've got a sensor that collects data, you know, gas detection is one of the outcomes of some of these sensors. If you've got a sensor, you know, at some point it will shrink and it will go on a drone. So I think that's just the journey of travel. And who uses them? This is some, you know, examples of people who are using them from a building asset management. And it's a very long list. It's basically any community that owns property. And you'll see some examples from housing that we'll talk about in a little while, because of the work that was done with Yorkshire Housing and a few others. You know, there's a lot of other people who should be using drones, and part of what we're trying to do is to get that message out. You know, they're not a toy, they can bring real benefits. And then examples, second page, inspections, wind farms, solar farms. I mean, a couple of interesting pieces. You know, solar farms, I didn't realize how big those things were. So putting people up to go and do inspections is really quite sort of time consuming and dangerous. So, you know, using drones is a real benefit there. And the wind farms, that was wind farm, sorry, solar farms, where they've got massive areas, using a thermal camera can tell you the efficiency of the solar panels. But, you know, interestingly, and I'm not going to pretend this is in production, but I saw a prototype where they had the drone was checking the solar properties and, you know, are all the panels working? But then it also had 4 little soft cleaners underneath it, and the drone would drop down and it would sort of clean off the panel where they had dirty ones. So the main point about this slide is, there is a lot of stuff. You won't watch a film, a TV, or the news pretty much now without seeing at least one drone shot in there. And the interesting trend for me is, I don't know, I did watch it, but I watched it because I knew the operator. Celebrity the Hunted, if anyone's ever watched that, the drone operator was behind the scenes in the first series. And in the last series, he was actually part of the series, put the drone up and, hey, Jason, can you see them? So that was very interesting. They started to be part of the show as opposed to filming in the background. So that's sort of where we are now. In the future, as we talked, urban air mobility, air taxis, regional transport will start to happen in 3, 4, 5 years' time. The early pieces, won't be, and where I say, the longer time frame, that's the sort of routine where any of us may have access to those services. There will be pilots, before that potentially. And then the freight transportation, the bulk cargo is one thing, moving it from area 1 to area 2 with a big payload. But also the last mile delivery, medical, great examples during COVID, cancer treatments being transported where you've got to sort of overcome sort of physical barriers like, over to the Isle of Wight where you've got water in the way. And then the last piece, which I can't think, anyone can think of a better phrase, but drones that do. The example would be the one that, so they're inspecting the solar panels, they now go and clean the panel as well. But 3D printing, Leeds University experimented with printing stuff to actually do small fixes. There will be drones that actually go and do a job in addition to just collecting data. I'm not going to talk through this one. Suffice to say that, pretty much any industry that is inspecting anything or collecting data on anything or, presenting estate agents, doing films and what have you with that aerial view, they're pretty prevalent all over the place. And these are some surveyor, sort of came from a surveying presentation, but combining data sets, looking at the section, and this was actually the A14 project, following closeout, doing inspections and maintenance, looking at inspection and monitoring of particular pieces. There's the good old wind farm, does not convey the scale. Church spires, some of these came from, there's a number of church buildings that, well, you'll see one, Yorkshire Housing, where it was actually a converted church, but inspecting something like this, the only way of doing it really, because scaffolding's not very easy, so, it's hanging someone on a rope and letting them clamber up and down that, or you put a drone up. Using infrared and other sensors to do comparisons, looking at the vegetation and what have you, and the depth and all of that is sort of coming on, where it used to be impossible. People have now got techniques to examine that. Enclosed spaces. So this is actually a tunnel down on the south coast. I think from it's fairly old, and they were trying to work out what condition they were in. Excuse the sort of bouncy, but this is the drone sort of heading in, and the upshot is this had been drained, so although there's water there, it had been drained for about 2 days before this, but they just wanted to see what condition. And rather than send someone in and risk something happening, they put the drone down And you'll see in a few seconds, lo and behold, you come to an area, it's going to be pretty impassable without doing some work to clear a blockage. You can see there it hit the wall. This is a drone with a cage around it, so it was sort of designed to fly in enclosed spaces, so it doesn't have rotors that will, you know, be damaged if it does bump the side. They're all inside a cage. And here we go. You know, not looking too good at that point. So we get assessment, and you know, lots of running water, which is why the pumping was needed in the first place. So you know, you can get the assessment and you can get it fairly quickly, and you've got the video, and you can then dispatch that to other people. And in fact, you know, you'll see later the surveyors could actually be back in the office and just watching the videos and you know, be on the phone. So it's actually more productive in certain aspects. They're only called on when they're needed. Looking at a fairly sort of dilapidated section of roof. Things like this to me are interesting because of all the different levels you have, and trying to map those and size them and look for damage. You know, they're all over the place. Now that's quite a dangerous sort of walk for someone to go inspecting in the level of detail that you need. And of course, feeding BIM is one of the other things you can collect the data for. And then the other development, and again, I don't think this is, you know, totally sort of in full use, but using artificial intelligence, get a drone generated roof report that automatically identifies and looks at areas that need to be examined by a surveyor, sort of helps cut down on that upfront work. And you know, it's also repeatable, so you could do time, you know, now in 6 months time or 12 months time, depending on the inspection. But also the software now is very accurately can measure a flat roof. So you not only check the condition of the flat roof, but if it does need repair, you can actually accurately measure it, and then without even going up there, you can actually quote for a repair activity. Couple of slides on, you know, thermography, and I say thermography because there's some small drones now that have thermal cameras, but you've just got to be a little bit careful that what you're actually trying to achieve is within the bounds of the equipment you're trying to use. And you know, for us, that's a fairly important. And if you're doing serious building inspection and what have you, you probably want, you know, the quality and for it to be examined by a thermographer so that the data is properly interpreted. And you know, I still love the level of detail that you can get, and the models you can build are pretty impressive and pretty sort of they really sort of help you explain what you've done and what needs to be done. One of the comments that comes up, so I'm now going to change and say, you know, one of the comments that comes up is about, well, how accurate are they? And, you know, rather than me sort of go on about that, I just borrowed some documents from the Survey Association. And they publish a lot of documents, either their own or in conjunction with RICS and the Chartered Institute of Civil Engineering Surveyors, CICES. And you know, LiDAR data can be collected. This is the view of where, you know, it can be really useful. I just highlight the bit here. Small UAVs can achieve much greater point densities. And you know, looking at comparing some data with some work that the Ordnance Survey GB did. And it's not only, we've been sort of working in the background, drone applications and compliance, May 2019. I think the acknowledgement in that one is probably James Dunthorne. You know, so we've been working with them on books, and then the most recent one that we sort of that was published was September last year. Summarizing this, inaccessible areas, larger scale, you may want to use a fixed wing for that, multiple outputs, very cost effective, quick and efficient, health and safety, you know, improve the risk, etc. But you still need to have people who know what they're doing and are qualified and you know, have the expertise in these areas. So that's my comment about very accurate, but you know, it's got to be in the right hands. I always sort of tell the story about, you know, someone tried to show me with the work they'd been doing, and they were trying to show me this 3D model, and the walls were see-through. And I sort of said, well, you know, hang on, you know, the walls are see-through. So, oh yeah, well, we haven't sort of quite finished collecting the data yet. And I mean, you know, it sort of, and that was a number of years ago. And, you know, but you have got to make sure that anyone that you work with has got the right capabilities. Artificial intelligence will help. Robotics will see the drones that do. Automation, autonomy, and, you know, then down the bottom, you know, the thing that some people need, like the long linear inspection in the in network rail, or in the utilities, inspecting power lines, or inspecting that coastline, you need BV loss. For a lot of work right now, you can get the benefits tomorrow because you don't need, you know, everything you need is available. So now I'm just going to go through a few financial examples. The data was from some work that we did with the Catapult with housing associations. 6.3 billion. So there are about, there's over 1,500 housing associations in the UK, and they look after, and the numbers vary, but you know, people say it's between 2.5 and 4 million properties. I always take the lower one, 2.5 million. But 6.3 billion spent on maintenance and repair to those properties. And they can benefit, and I'm just going to show you how, from, you know, the stuff we've been talking about. So some of the examples, 10 times return, saves 12 to 18%, Renfrew Shire, and I'm going to go through that in some detail, multi-million pound savings, and other quotes, you know, could save money. So Yorkshire Housing that you heard about in the video, 3 buildings, oh, I've shown you that already. So the Yorkshire Housing piece, one of them was a converted church. And the point was they'd been told that it would, you know, roof would cost, had to be replaced, £350,000. During the demonstration, the senior guy said, hang on a minute, just go back, show me that section there. Right, they worked out that actually a repair of between 50 and 60,000 was what was needed, not the whole roof being replaced. And that was after, I don't know, about 20 minutes of flight. Nottingham, you know, they were able to actually identify where leaks were coming from by putting a drone up that they'd been backwards and forwards. And we all know stories where people who are meant to fix things keep coming back because they didn't fix it the last time they visited. And, you know, what we're looking at with some of this is over 70% savings by doing the some of these inspections using a drone rather than the traditional methods and scaffolding or mutes. So Renfrewshire, my favourite. I struggle with saying the name sometimes, but they've got 12,500 properties, and they managed to save £4 million in the year using switching to drones and not using MUPs and what have you. And more importantly than that for me, right, if those numbers were extrapolated to all of the housing associations, out of that 6.3 billion, it would be an 800 million saving per annum that could be spent on something else in social housing. I just think that is, you know, massive, and we just need to get more attention on it so more people start exploring and taking advantage. And then, you know, other asset management, validating that you've actually done the repairs, the thermal surveys, looking at the efficiency of buildings, looking at the heat dissipation is, and, you know, how the fit of windows and what have you are. So, you know, there's a lot. The bottom one is one from them validating and assessing insurance claims and legal disrepair, you know, legal disrepair issues. So lots and lots of different uses. I'm not going to go through this at all, other than to say that, you know, we built, and there's a bank of data that says we looked at the economic case, the social case, and the environmental case. So the justifications and the benefits were sort of put into 3 different areas there. Avoiding mistakes is, you know, what we learned was that you've got to be very clear on the problem you're trying to solve. Don't try defining the answer, define the problem. Who is it going to impact, and who are the stakeholders? How will you use any drone data, and what metrics, right? And I guess my sort of, the other advice I'd say is make sure you talk to people, because one of the biggest issues that drone operators have is that customers try defining what they think they want, some of which is not deliverable, but it also sort of misses the point. So I talk to people, and happy to advise who you may want to talk to if you're actually looking to start on a drone program. And then, you know, this is map the existing workflows. You know, it's got to be integrated. You've got to integrate it with existing workflows. You cannot, you know, run it as an activity on the side. It won't work. And, you know, looking at your existing processes, the gaps, etc. So, I mean, this is a whole subject. And if there is some interested in things like this, we will run some sessions. So, you know, please give us feedback. Yeah, I mean, you know, again, I tuck this in because, you know, the language is, and it just like any industry, you know, there is language in maritime, for instance. I don't understand what they're talking about. They've created their own language, BVLOS, SPV, ANO, CAP. You know, it's not simple, and there are some fairly stringent regulations in place and legislation. But at the end of the day, the drones are another tool for the business, and, you know, you've got to put them in that box. Yeah, the partnering piece, you know, again, is not easy, because there's lots of people out there who own drones, and the reality is you've got to make sure you pick somebody. And again, we're looking at whether we put this on as a separate subject, which is to look at, you know, how can you partner? How can you buy services in? We have, for instance, a specific contract that looks at the terms and conditions for buying drone services, because there are things that you need to make sure you cover that you know, aren't necessarily the same terms and conditions that you'd use for other things and other services you buy. I put this one in. This was Michael May. He was going to be doing this presentation, and you know, you've got to check out the people that you're dealing with, and then governance, business case, business model, know what you're, the business case, know what you're trying to achieve. So this checklist is actually been recaptured in a document called the Drone Readiness. And that will be coming out, I think, if it's not out today, it will be in the first few weeks of April. But again, we can always give you a draft copy of that if anybody's particularly interested. Things like the weather, right? Certainly they will impact smaller drones. However, if you have a real requirement to fly in all weather, as you saw from the Buxton site there, where they were flying, and that drone evolved dynamic, that will cope with rain and will cope with high winds. So they're not cheap, but it depends what you want and what the business case is about whether, how you justify that. And, should we buy one ourselves? Personally, I would say that's not where I would start. I'd prove the business case first and then look at how you deliver it. And if you're looking for experienced drone service providers, then, please get in touch. So quickly summarizing that, we've got about 10 minutes and I do want to leave some time for, in case there are any questions, but ask for advice. There's lots of information. Make sure you understand the CAA regulations or you hire someone who does. You've got to review whether it should be in-house versus contracted. Conventional wisdom says that, unless you're a very big organization, you've got to make sure you get the utilization out of the vehicles. And I use the example of, if you had a requirement for an HGV lorry, but only sort of once a month, you'd buy it in. So until you make sure that how regularly you want to use something, make sure that you buy the service in and then build the business case. I think I've covered that. The bottom point is really something which is, look, we're here to try and help. If you've got some sessions, say, hey, are you doing any sessions on? We'll either talk to you individually or we'll say, well, actually, a few people have asked, let's put a session on. So the plea is, please tell us what you need. And I'm going to end with a few, what I like to say, myths and facts. People say, oh, drones are toys. The management view is that it's just, we want to play with toys. Well, clearly that's why you've got to take the business case. The other view then is you go to the other extreme. Well, they're very expensive. Well, no, if they're delivering value and if they're delivering financial benefits, they're not expensive. They're great value. The whole sort of data quality is poor, data is inaccurate. I think, historically, that was potentially an issue with the drones themselves and the sensors, but also an issue with the operator. And I think a lot of that has sort of worked its way out of the system and is no longer true. Lots of red tape. There is lots of red tape, so that's probably one that is a bit of a fact. But no more red tape than in a previous life, I had a firm where we had 8 vehicles. There's a lot of red tape if you're running vehicles. So people would argue that it's necessary red tape to make sure that you comply and you have governance and oversight of any operation. And from that perspective, yes, there is red tape with flying, but it's just really to maintain safety. And I can fly my drone anywhere. Again, sort of true, but not true, depending what you're doing with it, depending what sort of drone it is. There's a lot of finessing in the rules there. And as an example, at a meeting on Monday, we had the police talking and sort of clarifying some of these pieces, and we are working with them to try to get those messages out to people as well. You only need an operator ID, flyer ID. No, you need insurance if you're going to be operating commercially. And to me, that's just like any other thing that you would do in business. If you're going to do something, you probably need to make sure that you've got insurance cover. the waiting for BV loss, you know, is one that sort of sometimes drives me mad, because there's a lot of work you could do and a lot of benefits. You don't need BV loss. I hope I've shown you that they can deliver business cases. That's not to say that every now and then when you come up with an idea, someone's not going to say to you, you might be better off using a camera on a pole, sir. Because, you know, sometimes that is the case. The public are anti-drone. There will be some more stuff coming out. Turns out they're not. They are anti, you know, some of the press reports about drones, but once they're fed the real facts, they're actually very supportive. And for any drone operators on the call, because I know there are a couple, if they're, you know, hopefully I've demonstrated the drone market is not saturated. There's lots of opportunities. You just got to be very clear on what you're trying to deliver. I'm going to give you a minute while I catch my breath to read that. Some thanks to people who've provided data and pictures and what have you, and the sort of some of the more the slides I've used and what have you, the credit. But thank you very much for your time, and we're now on questions. Any Q&A, here we go. Right, I'll just, Elena, I'll just take them one by one, shall I? Training, yes, if you want to become an operator, one of the things you need to do from an approvals point of view is you need to contact someone who does approved CAA training. There's a number of those in the UK. The list does change. Again, you know, sort of ask us the question. You really need a local one. You don't want to be traveling too far. The starting point is an A2C of C, and that will cost you somewhere between 50 or 150 pounds, an online course and an assessment. And yeah, but shoot us an email if you want to know more. But the more important question is, what's your business case? What business are you going to go into? Because, you know, being a newbie drone operator is not actually going to make you successful. You need to make sure you know where you want to go and who you want to work with. Next question says, talks about, are we collaborating? Yes, yeah, we are collaborating with the Survey Association, CICES, RICS, ICE, and other industry sectors. And in fact, I talked yesterday to the Survey Association annual general meeting. So yeah, we are engaged with those, and really to sort of make sure that we cover the fact that you know, we know about drones and they know about their subjects, and let's work together. Where do I find accredited professional drone operator? Yes, again, contact us, and you know, it's not only, to me, there's 2 or 3 things there. It's do they have the experience for the job that you want done? Are they close to you? Because you don't really want to be paying for a whole load of travel, not given the price of fuel right now, particularly. And you need to make sure that you check out that they've done it before and their references. Will you be able to provide use case references so we can talk to end users? The answer is yes. We are looking at how to pull those together clearly. And that's where we're working again with the catapult to try to make sure that we make those available in a searchable way. But if you've got any questions in the meantime, just drop me an email. Who's responsible for gaining permissions? Right, typically the operator. If this is talking about the flight permissions for a particular job, you want to make sure that you have oversight of what the operator's done. But I would, you know, I think that obligation is on them, but you want to check that they've done it and that they've got permission. partly though, if you might be the landowner, because certainly the Yorkshire Housing owned the land in, I think, 2 out of 3 of the cases where takeoff was done, they owned the land. But then some on the third one, they had to get permission from the building next door to take off from their car park. And that is a point people don't always understand. You can only control takeoff and landing points from your land. You cannot control, you're not, people can overfly your land. That's not illegal. And then, are there enough drone pilots to cover the UK needs? The answer is no. Yeah, the thing about, so the question is about, are there enough pilots? I would argue no, but we do need that more than the small section of housing associations who are currently using drones. We need the bulk of the rest of them to start using them as well, and that will drive the demand. In terms of looking at jobs and what have you, we've been working with aviation and the DFT. There is a website that we're going to be promoting, which is skills retention, aviation skills retention program. And then we always help our members who are looking to hire people. That's the other sort of point about this. But if you want to have a chat about it, then please contact me, LinkedIn or via email, and we can have a one-on-one chat. That's you, Alex. And what industry is economically benefiting the most? Well, that's a real the industries that are using them a lot. Network Rail, their adoption has gone up massively. They had a team of 5. I think they've probably got 50 plus now, pilots. The police, people like Devon and Cornwall, where they have people getting lost all the time, because they're sort of fairly rural communities. Lincolnshire, finding lost people who have wandered off. And again, their teams have grown dramatically to a lot of people, because it is, very, very effective for some of their jobs. Finding people who are trapped down on the coast, and trying to make sure that you can communicate with them while you rescue them. So I would say those, the sort of utilities for the long linear inspections. Construction, although that's probably slightly less, but the benefits are there in just about any industry. So hopefully that's answered that one. And I think, hang on. No, I think that's all of them answered. Anything else? Because I think we're just about at time otherwise. Just having a quick look in the chat. Will an EU drone license transfer over when they operate? Okay. That's sort of still a little bit debatable, but if you've got an EU drone license, those things have sort of diverged and are diverging. So that's one to tread with care. The intention is that we try to make sure that UK can fly in Europe, and but there's still a bit of work to be done on that. That was from KC. So again, KC, if you want to sort of contact us offline, then we can try to help if you've got a specific issue. I think that's it. Anything from you, Elena? I can't hear anybody. Are you on mute? Are you there?
I am here. Can you?
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
I'll stop sharing, and then I might be able to see people. Look, I mean, if there's nothing else, then I'm going to say thank you very much for your time. And I repeat, tell us what you're looking for, tell us what you need, and and contact me if I can help with anything. Thank you very much.